be an appropriate place to stop. Moritz.
Thank you, Neil. Let me give you an economic calculation maybe of a scenario that we all don't want. That's the defeat scenario, which is not the likely one, but maybe that's as an economist, an answer that doesn't start with "it depends." This is sort of the numbers that I can think about. There will be the costs of not doing enough are, I think, can be quantified quite clearly. There is going to be a need for much more military expenditure in Western Europe. If you think 2% was enough once in the scenario of a victorious Russia, that's not going to be enough. So pick your poison, but it's going to be 1-2% more of GDP that Western Europe will have to spend. That's quite a big cost. Then you'll have the human tragedy. You'll have many more refugees. You'll have the fiscal cost of that. You have the loss of trade. You can easily add another % of GDP to that. So that gives us 3% of GDP. And then we come to that many here mentioned, the cost in terms of deterrence that is no longer there. What Mike Pompeo called the good guys lose. That will incite more conflict. It will be an incentive for the bad guys to be more aggressive. That's a hard calculation. It will increase conflict probabilities around the world. More sanctions, more decoupling. We've done a study on decoupling of the German economy from China. If that's a scenario that becomes more likely, it's probably going to be a cost of 5-6% of GDP. If that becomes 10%, 20% more likely, that's a real cost as well. In any case, you end up with significant costs, about maybe 4 or 5% of GDP for Western Europe of that bad scenario. And everything else then it will be less than that. And if you compare that, these 4-5% of GDP, to what we're doing now to help Ukraine, to these 0.1, 0.15, 0.2% of GDP, you end up with a very simple calculation. It's 20 to 30 times more expensive to end up there than to do what we're doing now. So it's in our own self-interest to do more, and we should be willing to pay much more and support much more to avoid these much higher costs that are waiting for us.
Thank you, Moritz, and keep saying this in Berlin.